Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Hey, everyone.
If you have been with us for a while, we usually like to tear into the heavy stuff.
Yeah, the dense material.
Right, like corporate espionage
Yeah.
or breakthrough AI or maybe the occasional historical cold case.
Oh, yeah. We have definitely gone down some intense rabbit holes lately.
We really have.
Mm.
But today we're actually doing something a little bit different.
A very different vibe today.
Exactly. We are clearing off the desk, we are pushing aside the white papers, and we are putting a novel right in the center of the room.
It feels like a shift, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
But I think by the time we are done here today, everyone listening is going to realize that sometimes fiction is actually the sharpest tool we have to get at the truth.
Especially when the truth is this gritty.
Oh, absolutely. Gritty is the perfect word for it.
So let me set the stage for you all. The book we are unpacking today is titled Baagh Tiger Dash, The Inside Story.
Great title.
It is. It dropped in July 2025, so it is a very recent release.
Very fresh.
Published by Blue Rose Publishers. And it is written by a man named Abhishek Ray.
Abhishek Ray.
Yes. Now, I want to frame our mission here immediately because the marketing for this book, and honestly just the general buzz on the street, is throwing around a very specific, very heavy comparison.
It is a bold claim they are making.
Huge claim. People are calling this the real Jungle Book of today.
Which is just a massive comparison. I mean, think about that.
Right, the Jungle Book.
The Jungle Book, Rudyard Kipling, Disney.
It is everywhere.
It really is. You are invoking a global cultural monolith with that phrase.
You really are. When you say those words, people immediately picture something very specific.
Exactly. You picture singing bears, you picture wise panthers, and a boy raised by wolves.
The bare necessity.
Right, the bare necessities. It is almost comforting. It is pure nostalgia.
Nostalgia is exactly what it is. It is a childhood memory for most of us.
But the source material we have on Baagh the Tiger suggests that this comparison isn't about nostalgia at all.
Not even a little bit.
No,
Yeah.
it is actually about a correction.
A correction. I like that.
It is saying, okay, that was the fantasy. Here is the reality.
So the Jungle Book of today isn't a whimsical adventure.
Definitely not.
It doesn't operate on that whole law of the jungle thing where animals have a strict code of honor and hold councils in the moonlight.
No, this narrative is grounded in what our sources specifically call gritty realities.
Greedy realities.
We are talking about a thriller rooted in the dark, violent, and highly organized world of the global illicit wildlife trade.
So the stakes are established right from page one.
Immediately.
This isn't just a story about a tiger walking peacefully through the woods.
This is a full-blown crime thriller.
And so our mission for today's deep dive is to figure out exactly how this specific book serves as a vehicle for a massive conservation message.
Because that is the real trick here.
Right. We aren't just doing a standard book review here for you today.
Yeah.
We are analyzing how a thriller can actually teach us about one of the largest black markets on the entire planet.
And to do that, we really need to look at three specific pillars to understand why this narrative works so well.
Okay, lay them out for us.
First, we have to talk about the author, Abhishek Ray, because his resume is, frankly, one of the most confusing and brilliant things I have ever seen.
That is wild.
It really is. Second, we need to get into the head of the protagonist, Jagu, and look at his psychological arc.
The character journey.
Exactly. And third, we need to map out the geography of the story because it takes us on a pan-Indian journey that directly mirrors the actual supply chain of wildlife crime.
Okay, I love that structure.
Okay.
Let's start with that first pillar, the author Abhishek Ray.
Yes, let's get into it.
I was reading through the background profile provided in our source material, and I honestly had to reread it 3 times.
I don't blame you.
It genuinely feels like 2 completely different people mashed into one bio.
It is a totally unique intersection of art and wildness.
Art and wildness.
Yeah, I don't think I have ever come across a creator with this specific duality before.
So let's break it down. On one side, you have the artist.
Right, the artist.
The source details that Ray is a national award-winning Bollywood composer and filmmaker.
So let's unpack what that actually means for his writing. He is a guy who understands the mechanics of emotion fundamentally.
Because of the music?
Exactly. As a composer, he knows exactly how to build tension using rhythm.
He knows how to manipulate the pacing.
He knows when to use silence. Silence in music is just as important as the notes.
Wow. Yeah, that is a great point.
And as a filmmaker, he understands visual framing, how to set a scene, how to direct the audience's eye to what really matters in that specific moment.
So basically, he knows how to entertain.
Oh, he definitely knows how to entertain.
He knows how to keep you hooked on the edge of your seat.
Precisely. But then you flip the coin.
You flip the coin, and you get the conservationist.
The other half of the bio.
The source material specifically says he's a government-certified tiger tracker.
And that right there is where it gets really interesting.
It really does.
I think a lot of people might just gloss over that term, tiger tracker. They might just think, oh, he likes hiking. He likes being outdoors.
But to be government-certified.
That is a serious discipline.
What does that actually entail? Because I am trying to picture it, and in my head, I'm basically just imagining a guy walking around with binoculars looking at bushes.
It is so much more intense than that.
Okay, tell me.
Tracking is essentially forensic science performed in the dirt.
Forensic science in the dirt.
Yeah, you are literally reading the news of the forest floor. A tracker has to look at a pug mark, a footprint, and determine not just that a tiger was there, but exactly when it was there.
Wait, how do you even do that?
You have to look at how the dust has settled inside the print, or if the edges of the print are crumbling in a certain way, or how much moisture has evaporated from the soil since the animal stepped there.
That is incredible. So it requires this hyper-awareness.
Total hyper-awareness. You have to be completely tuned in to your environment.
You can't just be casually strolling.
Not at all. You have to listen to the alarm calls of other animals, too. The langur monkeys, the chital deer.
They act as the alarm system.
Exactly. And you have to know the difference between a monkey's call that means I see a leopard and a call that means I see a tiger.
They have different call for different predators.
They do. And you are doing all of this processing, all this information, often on foot, right in the domain of an apex predator that specializes in ambush.
That is terrifying.
It requires nerves of absolute steel and a level of sensory perception that most of us living in cities have completely lost.
So when you take those two worlds, the composer who understands pacing and the tracker who understands the visceral sensory details of the jungle, what do you actually get on the page?
You get pure authenticity.
Authenticity.
Source material makes a really specific point to discuss this. It says Ray's background directly shapes the prose because he isn't an outsider looking in.
He's not just doing library research.
No, he knows the rhythm of the jungle firsthand.
That word rhythm keeps coming up in our sources.
Because the jungle genuinely does have a rhythm.
How so?
It has this constant cadence of life and death. If the birds suddenly stop singing, that is a break in the rhythm.
Right, a sudden silence.
And that silence signals danger. A composer would feel that break instinctively.
Because they are trained to hear the beat drop, basically.
Exactly. So when Ray describes a tense scene in the book, he is likely describing something he has actually felt in his own body. The humidity, the metallic smell of a fresh kill, the sudden, terrifying silence.
It is lived experience.
It is completely lived. It is not just imagined.
And there is another massive layer to his credibility that I think is crucial for us to highlight for you all.
The Siddhabani connection.
Yes, the Siddhabani connection. The source mentions that he didn't just walk through the woods taking notes, he actually founded the Siddhabani Wildlife Reserve.
This right here is the moral anchor of the entire project, in my opinion.
The moral anchor.
Yeah, this moves him entirely from being an observer to being an active protector.
Our text says he worked on rewilding barren hills into a thriving habitat. Now, rewilding is one of those buzzwords we hear a lot these days, especially in corporate sustainability reports.
Oh, yeah, it is thrown around constantly.
But what does it actually mean in this specific on-the-ground context?
In this context, it is pure ecosystem engineering. And it is brutal, back-breaking hard work.
It is not just planting a tree.
Not at all. Barren hills implies land that has been completely stripped, maybe by decades of overgrazing, maybe by aggressive deforestation.
So the land is effectively dead.
The soil is dead, the water table is likely completely gone. To rewild that kind of devastation, you don't just plant a few saplings and walk away hoping for the best.
You'd have to rebuild the foundation.
You have to fundamentally restore the water retention capabilities of the land. You have to carefully bring back the native grasses.
And then what?
Well, once the grass finally comes back, then the herbivores return. The deer, the wild boar.
The prey base.
Exactly. And only when you have a fully stable, robust prey base can you even begin to think about supporting a massive predator like a wild tiger.
That sounds like a decades-long commitment.
It is. It is literally a lifetime of work.
A lifetime.
The fact that the author has physically done this, that he has turned dead, exhausted land back into a living, breathing forest, means that when his book talks about safeguarding nature, he intimately knows the true cost of that safeguarding.
He knows the sweat equity involved.
He knows the sweat, the money, the tears, all of it.
It gives the book a heavy moral weight. It elevates it. It is not just some Say the Tigers slogan slapped on a dust jacket.
Exactly.
It is a message coming directly from someone who has physically successfully restored the land.
Precisely. And I think that reality bleeds directly into the narrative voice of the novel. When we get to the core themes later, I want you to remember this. The author has seen the land die, and he has seen it come back to life.
That is powerful.
That perspective is almost certainly what fuels the intense urgency you feel when reading the book.
Okay, let's pivot to the story itself because we've been talking about the author, but the central character is a man named Jagu.
Jagu, yes.
And again, the author completely defies the standard thriller stereotype here. Jagu isn't a heroic forest ranger with a badge or a tough city detective dropped into the wild to solve a case.
No, not at all. Jagu is a tribal man from a family of poachers in central India.
Born into a violent tradition, the source calls it.
That specific phrase, violent tradition, is so heavily loaded.
It really is. It stops you in your tracks.
It immediately complicates the entire narrative. It suggests right off the bat that Jagu isn't a villain by choice, at least not initially.
He is a product of his environment.
He is a product of his environment and his deeply ingrained heritage.
I think that is a really, really important nuance to explore. If you grew up in a family where poaching is just what you do to put food on the table, or how you prove your worth as a provider, you don't see it as a crime in the same way an educated outsider does.
Right. It is completely normalized for him. It is harsh economic necessity mixed with generational cultural inertia.
Generational inertia. That is a good way to phrase it.
If your father was a hunter, and his father before him was a hunter, and you currently live in a remote village with absolutely zero alternative economic opportunity, picking up a snare or a gun isn't some malicious act of evil against the planet.
It is just Tuesday.
It is survival, plain and simple.
So Jagu essentially starts the novel as the antagonist, or at least he is a very active part of the problem.
He starts as a functioning cog in the machine of ecological destruction.
A cog in the machine.
But the core arc of the entire book, the real reason it is a compelling story and not just a dry documentary, is his transformation.
The journey he goes on.
The source text explicitly tracks his journey from being a hunter of tigers to becoming a fierce protector of the wild.
That is a massive, massive psychological shift for a person to make.
Yeah.
To go from actively killing the animal for profit to risking your own life to save it.
It is huge.
Yeah.
And in literary terms, we obviously call that a redemption arc.
Right. Standard character arc.
But in the specific context of global conservation, our source explicitly states that Jagu's journey is meant to be a metaphor for humanity's choice as a whole.
Okay, let's really unpack that metaphor for a second. If Jagu represents us, if he represents humanity.
It suggests that just because we as a species have this long, brutal history of destruction, just because we have essentially been poachers of the planet for centuries, it doesn't mean we are permanently locked into that grim fate.
We can change course.
We aren't prisoners of our own history.
Right.
If a man born directly into a poaching family with every single economic incentive telling him to keep killing can consciously choose to become a protector, then surely human society at large can make that exact same shift.
It suggests that it's not too late for us.
Exactly. It is a profound message of hope wrapped up inside a gritty thriller.
Hope inside the grit.
It says loudly that we can switch sides. We can go from being the antagonist in nature's story to being the protagonist who finally steps up and defends it.
But the book also seems to make it very clear that switching sides isn't easy. It is actually incredibly dangerous.
Oh, incredibly deadly, in fact. And this actually brings us right back to that initial Jungle Book comparison.
Right, the gritty realities.
The source says the narrative is grounded in gritty realities. In Kipling's Jungle Book, the primary danger was Shere Khan.
The tiger itself was the threat.
Right. It was a natural primal danger. The danger was the wild.
But in Baagh Tiger,
In Baagh Tiger, the real danger is the syndicate.
the human element.
It is the highly organized international crime ring. When Jagu decides to stop poaching, he doesn't just get a polite pat on the back and a gold star.
He becomes a problem.
He immediately becomes a massive liability to the ruthless criminals he used to work for. He is hunted. The jungle isn't some magical, isolated place apart from humanity anymore. It is an active crime scene.
The jungle is a crime scene. That is a really chilling way to put it.
It changes the whole perspective.
It really does.
Yeah.
And that leads us perfectly into the setting of the book, because this crime scene isn't static. It is not just one forest. The book actually takes us on a massive journey.
The geography here is essentially a major character in itself. The source text maps it out very clearly for us, and it is absolutely fascinating.
Walk us through it.
It starts right in the dusty plains of the Deccan Plateau and the emerald forests of central India.
Which is classic, iconic tiger territory. The intense heat, the towering teak trees, the dry dust.
But then the story moves. It doesn't stay there. It pushes through the narrow, crowded bylanes of Kathmandu.
Into Nepal.
Yes, and then it goes all the way up into the freezing, snowy Himalayan passes.
And this is where your expert analysis really comes in handy. Regarding the why of it all.
The route?
Why this specific route? Why go from the blazing heat of central India to the city streets of Kathmandu and then up to the frozen Himalayas? This can't just be for scenic variety.
No, it is absolutely not random. This geography directly tracks the actual real-world route of the illegal wildlife trade.
Wait, really? So the plot of the thriller is literally following the actual supply chain?
Yes, central India is the source. That is where the living tigers actually are.
Right.
But you can't exactly sell a raw tiger skin in a tiny rural village in Madhya Pradesh for big international money.
There is no market for it there.
Exactly. You have to get that contraband to the lucrative international black market.
Which is where?
Historically, Nepal, and specifically those porous, largely unmonitored borders high in the Himalayas, have been the major transit routes for smuggling illicit wildlife parts out of India and funneling them into the massive demand markets in Tibet and China.
So Jagu is physically following the bloody path of the contraband.
He is. He is moving step by step up the criminal food chain.
From the poacher to the buyer.
He is going from the immediate point of the kill all the way to the international point of transit.
It also sounds visually stunning just from a cinematic perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, the extreme contrast between the suffocating heat of the Deccan, where it can be, 45 degrees Celsius?
Easily 45 degrees.
To the completely freezing, unforgiving ice of the high Himalayas. The source explicitly mentions vivid landscapes.
It really ramps up the narrative tension. Just think about the physical toll that kind of extreme transit takes on a character.
It would be exhausting.
But you aren't just fighting bad guys with guns anymore. You are actively fighting hypothermia.
You're fighting the elements.
You are fighting severe altitude sickness. It adds a desperate layer of survivalism to the entire story.
It really emphasizes the sheer massive scale of the issue. This isn't just a local small-town crime.
Not at all.
It is a vast transnational enterprise that spans entire continents and extreme climates.
And that sprawling scale leads us directly to the core themes the source highlights for us: crime, conflict, and conservation.
Let's dig into those themes. The source specifically categorizes the book as a wildlife crime thriller.
Wildlife crime thriller, yes.
And it notes a really sobering fact, that wildlife trafficking is considered among the largest illicit trades globally.
I really think that is a fact that often just completely flies under the radar for the average person.
People don't realize how big it is.
They don't. We hear constantly about drug trafficking.
To cartels.
We hear about illegal arms trafficking. We hear terrible things about human trafficking. But wildlife trafficking is right up there in that same top tier in terms of the raw amount of money changing hands and the sheer global scale of the operations.
It is a massive industry.
It is a highly organized, multi-billion-dollar black market.
And the subtitle of the book, The Inside Story, implies that Ray is really popping the hood on this dark engine. He is showing us exactly how the machine works.
Right. It is not just a simplistic bad man shoots a tiger narrative.
It is the logistics.
It is asking the hard logistical questions. How exactly does a massive tiger skin get moved across 3 borders? Who is actually paying the bribes for it?
How do they hide it?
How do they successfully bypass airport or border security? How is all that dirty money eventually laundered? By explicitly calling it the inside story, the book promises a detailed procedural look at the actual mechanics of the crime.
That educational aspect is genuinely fascinating to me. Our source calls it a realistic and educational look.
It is a brilliant strategy.
So you are sitting there reading a fast-paced thriller. Your heart is pounding because of the intense chase scene, but you are accidentally learning about complex criminal logistics at the exact same time.
That is honestly the best possible way to learn, isn't it?
It really is.
It is the classic Trojan horse method of education.
The Trojan horse?
Yeah, think about it. If you sit down and write a dense, dry, 50-page academic report on the supply chain logistics of the illicit tiger bone trade, Absolutely nobody reads it, except maybe a handful of dedicated policy wonks.
It just sits on a shelf.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But if you write a gripping, visceral story about a guy named Jagu desperately chasing a ruthless smuggler through a freezing, snowy mountain pass, people suddenly remember the granular details.
Because they care what happens.
They finally understand the true complexity of the trade because they are deeply emotionally invested in the outcome of the characters.
It is the spoonful of sugar approach.
Or perhaps a spoonful of pure adrenaline in this case.
A spoonful of adrenaline. I like that. But there is another major theme the source highlights that we need to touch on. Human-wildlife conflict and the concept of coexistence.
This is a huge, huge topic. It is arguably the defining topic of modern Indian conservation.
Set the context for us. Why is it so defining there?
You really have to look at the raw numbers to understand the pressure. India currently has a population of over 1.4 billion people.
1.4 billion. That is staggering.
It is staggering, and the country is rapidly developing. They are building massive new highways, expanding huge cities, constantly needing more agricultural land to feed everyone.
The footprint is growing.
But simultaneously, India also holds the largest remaining population of wild tigers in the entire world.
And tigers obviously aren't like pigeons. They don't just hang out on a balcony. They need massive amounts of territory.
They absolutely do. They are solitary apex predators. They need vast, unbroken space to roam, to hunt effectively, to establish territory, to mate.
So the math just doesn't work out.
No, it creates this immense volatile pressure cooker. You have human populations aggressively pushing into the forest, and you have tiger populations pushing back out into human spaces.
The collision course.
Exactly. When our source text talks about coexistence, it is directly addressing the inevitable violent friction that happens when those two completely incompatible worlds collide.
Give us an example of that friction.
It is when a fully grown tiger casually walks through a crowded village at dusk, or when a poor farmer's newly planted field directly encroaches on the edge of a protected tiger reserve.
The stakes are literal life and death for both sides.
Exactly.
Does the book actually offer a neat solution to this, or does it just highlight the intractable nature of the problem?
The source notes that the book raises urgent questions. And honestly, in my professional opinion, that is often much more honest and impactful than trying to offer some fake, tidy, fictional solution.
Because there is no easy fix.
There isn't. It actively forces the reader to sit with the deep, uncomfortable reality of the situation.
The reality of coexistence.
Right. How do we actually coexist? If we, as a global society, truly want tigers to survive, we have to accept them as neighbors.
But that is a huge ask.
It is an almost impossible ask. Asking a vulnerable rural villager to calmly live next door to a man-eater is a fundamentally unfair proposition from someone sitting comfortably in a safe city.
And that tension ties right back to our protagonist, Jagu.
Yeah.
He is someone who has literally lived his entire life on that bloody front line.
He knows it better than anyone.
He knows the true heavy cost of the tiger's existence.
That is exactly the urgency the source is mentioning. The text specifically calls these pressing environmental challenges. By actively putting a human face on this conflict, Jagu's face, it makes the abstract political issue deeply personal.
It grounds it.
It stops being a dry statistic on a UN report and starts being a desperate, visceral story about basic survival for both the human being and the wild animal.
I really want to talk about how this book has actually been received by the public. Because let's be honest, sometimes these message books, these novels with a heavy cause, can be a bit well niche.
They can definitely feel preachy sometimes.
Exactly. They can feel like a lecture disguised as a story. But the source indicates that this has been a massive commercial success.
It really has. It hit bestseller status on both Amazon and Google Books.
And just look at the endorsements it got. Jackie Schroff, for example.
Bidu himself, an absolute icon.
Right. He called the book a clarion call for conservation. Now, for our international listeners tuning in who might not be deeply familiar with Indian pop culture, Jackie Schroff is an absolute living legend of Indian cinema.
A massive star.
But he is also known for being very earthy, very real. He has this massive, undeniable connection with the common everyday working man in India.
He really does. He isn't some elite ivory tower intellectual preaching from above. If Jackie Schroff holds up a book and says, read this, it matters that carries an immense amount of cultural weight. with a huge, very broad demographic.
It mainstreams the message.
It completely validates the book as
Right.
something meant for absolutely everyone, not just for a small circle of elite academic conservationists.
And then on the other side, you have someone like Sonu Nigam publicly praising the vivid dramatic narrative.
That specific endorsement is really interesting to me because Sonu Nigam is arguably one of the greatest, most celebrated singers in the country.
A musical genius.
Right. And connecting this back to the author Abhishek Ray's own background, I think a world-class musician like Sonu Nigam instantly recognizes the inherent musicality in the writing itself.
He sees the rhythm we talked about earlier.
Exactly. He sees the dramatic flow, the emotional crescendos. It completely validates the idea that Ray's background as a professional composer fundamentally shaped the way the book reads.
So looking at these diverse endorsements and the huge sales numbers, what does this commercial success actually tell us about the reading audience today?
This is the part that genuinely gives me a lot of hope for the future. It tells us that regular, everyday people are deeply hungry for stories that actually have purpose.
They want substance.
They really do.
Yeah.
They don't just want mindless throwaway entertainment anymore. Our source explicitly calls it a novel with purpose.
A novel with purpose.
The fact that a book tackling such heavy, grim realities is a runaway bestseller clearly suggests that the general public is actually very ready to engage with these difficult, complex topics. Things like violent poaching, looming extinction, widespread corruption.
As long as the delivery system is good.
Precisely. As long as the core storytelling is excellent, they will engage.
It is not a binary either-or situation.
No, it is not.
You don't have to choose between being thoroughly entertained by a thriller
Yeah.
and being deeply informed about a global crisis.
Exactly. The source clearly lists the book's value proposition for the reader. It offers emotional depth, a highly realistic look at international crime, and it aggressively raises public awareness about the plight of the tiger.
It is a complete package deal.
It is. People want to feel smart when they read, but they also want to feel deeply moved. Bad Tiger clearly seems to be delivering heavily on both fronts.
So if we take a step back and look at the big sweeping picture of what we've discussed today, Bad Tiger is clearly doing something incredibly ambitious.
Very ambitious.
It is trying to be a blockbuster commercial thriller and a deadly serious conservation manifesto at the exact same time.
And based entirely on the massive public reception, it is undeniably succeeding. It serves as a vital bridge.
A bridge between two worlds.
Right. It brings the general reading public people who might never in their lives sit down to watch a dry nature documentary or read a peer-reviewed scientific paper right into the center of the critical global conversation about extinction and the illicit trade.
And it manages to do all that heavy lifting through the eyes of a single character, Jagu, who perfectly embodies all the messy complexity of the issue.
That is the masterstroke of the whole book. You cannot simply hate Jagu because the author makes sure you fundamentally understand him.
Empathy is the key.
Empathy is everything here. And once you truly understand Jagu's motivations, you begin to understand exactly why poaching continues to happen.
You see the root causes.
You see the crushing poverty, you see the intense social pressure, you understand the weight of generational tradition.
Humanizes the criminal.
It humanizes the massive systemic problem, which frankly is the absolute necessary first step toward ever actually solving it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this all ultimately mean for you, the listeners tuning in today?
It means that we all need to start paying much closer attention to these kinds of narratives.
We need to look deeper.
The source specifically calls the book a realistic and educational look. It serves as a stark reminder that the brutal wildlife trade isn't just some abstract, tragic concept happening on another distant planet.
It is happening right here.
It is happening in our own backyards, on our own global trade routes,
Yep.
in our shared world. And most importantly, it is entirely driven by ongoing consumer demand.
It challenges us directly.
It absolutely does. It actively asks us to take a hard look at our own complicit role in the global system.
Which brings us right to the end of our deep dive for today. We have thoroughly looked at the author Abhishek Ray's fascinating double life as a Bollywood artist and a rugged tiger tracker.
A crazy combination.
We have tracked Jagu's incredible journey from the blistering heat of the central Indian plains all the way to the freezing ice of the high Himalayas.
We covered a lot of ground.
And we have stared directly down the barrel of the multi-billion-dollar illegal wildlife trade.
It is a whole lot to take in. It is a very heavy, very dark story at its core.
It is. But I want to leave you all with one final provocative thought before we sign off. Our source material heavily emphasizes that Jagu's personal journey is a direct metaphor.
The metaphor for humanity.
Right. He was born directly into a violent tradition of poaching. It was his default setting from birth.
It was his whole world.
It was the path of least resistance. But he consciously made the difficult choice to change. He actively chose to become a fierce protector instead.
And here is the really challenging question that reality raises for me.
Let's hear it.
If a desperate man whose entire livelihood and family heritage completely depended on killing tigers can somehow find the strength to choose to save them instead, what is our collective excuse?
Wow.
We are the end consumers. We are the global citizens. We are the ones who vote, who buy products, who ultimately decide exactly what we value as a society.
We hold the power.
We do. The book ultimately asks us to make that exact same hard choice. Are we going to remain passive, ignorant observers of this ongoing ecological destruction, or are we going to step up and become active participants in the safeguarding of our planet?
That is an incredibly powerful question to end on. And that is going to be it for our deep dive today into Baagh Tiger Dash, the Inside Story. We really hope this conversation sparks something new for you.
Stay curious, everyone.
And stay wild. We will see you all next time.